Hey everybody, it's Lon.TV, and it's time for your weekly wrap-up. It's Labor Day here in the United States. We had a nice 3-day weekend. It was great for me because I was able to take a day off from everything and just kind of regenerate and recharge and catch up on my sleep. So I am back for another week of more content. I want to thank, though, our newest Patreon subscriber, that is Don Hamaguchi. I also want to do a correction last week of Hewlett here because I called him Yule, and apparently what happened is when I pasted his name in, my Mac kept auto-correcting it. So watch what happens here. Every time I put the T on there, it auto-corrects it back to Yule, and I was struggling to get it to recognize that I really wanted the T on there. I even programmed it into the internal dictionary, and it was still not cooperating, but hopefully it stays okay for now on the slide, and I apologize for that mix-up. Hopefully I don't have too many of those as time goes on, but if you are a Patreon subscriber and I get your name wrong, if I say it wrong or spell it wrong, please do let me know because I want to make sure that I am correctly identifying you when I thank you for your contributions to the channel. So this week we looked at the Automatic Pro. It is a tracking device that plugs into your car. This is something you do voluntarily, of course, and it will give you gas mileage and location and a whole bunch of other data, including what those check engine lights might mean. It does a lot more in the background that Automatic is collecting data on, and I talk a little bit about privacy related to this device, and I'll cover more of that a little later in the wrap-up when we get to the Q&A section. It's something worth thinking about when you're buying a product like that. We also looked at the Plex DVR, and this is a new feature in beta that allows you to use your Plex server as a DVR also, and it will integrate DVR recordings with things that you put in yourself. It looks really nice and actually is functioning very, very well. It's exclusive to the HD Home Run right now for your tuner. I tried it with my HD Home Run Prime that uses my cable system here at the house, and I also used one at the Plex headquarters through the internet that was running off of an over-the-air antenna. Both worked really nicely and definitely worth a look if you are a Plex fan looking for recording TV. We also looked at the Honor 8. This is a new cell phone from Huawei, really nice flagship quality phone at a very reasonable price. It's $400. It has 2 cameras on the back, and I think we're going to be seeing a lot more of this 2-camera setup very shortly on many other cameras from many other manufacturers too. It's kind of neat to see how those work, and you can check out my full review in the master playlist link below. And I did an upload of something I did last week here on the wrap-up, but I expanded upon it in regards to how some of us small creators are kind of at a disadvantage, both in the fact that we get hit with all these copyright claims all day long, and it's very hard for us to make claims when people are stealing our content. And I go into detail on that and also replayed what I did on the wrap-up last week. I'm going to start pulling out a lot of these Q&A sections from the wrap-ups and uploading them to my extra channel. Unless I have something new to add, then I'll re-upload it to this one like I did in this case, because I do think these are really good searchable videos, and I think they're getting lost right now because they're in this 30-minute thing that subscribers like to watch, but people who don't know me, who want to find out more on a topic, might find them interesting and helpful. So I'm going to start pulling those out and loading them up on the second channel called Lon.TV/extra. So if you're subscribed there, you'll see those snippets hopefully in the next couple of weeks as I get more time to edit everything. And on my mind this week is something that I'm sure you've heard about already, which is the demonetization of content on YouTube. And I wanted to give you a different perspective on this topic so we can discuss it further. So in case you haven't heard, a number of popular YouTubers like Phil DeFranco got notices from YouTube this week to say that their content is no longer advertiser friendly. Not all of their content, but specific videos that they had uploaded. And Phil DeFranco in particular is a YouTuber who talks about current events. Sometimes he injects some of his raunchy humor into it, which is always entertaining, but for some reason, based on the topics that he's covering, YouTube has said those things are no longer advertiser friendly and he can't monetize those videos. There is an appeal process, but more than likely a lot of these YouTubers are going to see some of their revenue disappear because it's no longer friendly to big brands. And on the surface, this really is concerning because like my Nintendo example from last week with fair use, in that issue, Nintendo gets to pick and choose who makes money putting up gameplay footage of their video games when they're reviewing them. In this case now, we've got the entire platform determining what topics are suitable for their platform versus not. Now, they're not pulling these videos down, but if I'm trying to do some journalism and covering some current events that might be controversial, I might think twice about doing that and might stick to something safe like doing tech reviews or something like that. So that is a big problem because we still need journalism to exist in this country, and when platforms can determine a whole swath of content because it covers war or something that society needs to talk about is controversial, then it becomes an issue issue when none of those journalists can actually make any money. And we're seeing fewer and fewer opportunities for real news to get out to people because of all this sensitivity that's going on with how this advertising is placed. And part of the problem is how people perceive advertising based on the way it used to work. So I want to show you how advertising used to work and still does, maybe on television and newspapers, and how it works now. And I actually have a small advertising business that I do on the side where I help small organizations buy advertising on digital platforms, because I'm finding that it's very expensive for a lot of these small organizations and businesses to buy stuff, and I try to do it inexpensively along with a few partners of mine, and it's working pretty well in the sense that I've learned a lot from how all this works. I'm going to share some of that knowledge with you now. So typically the way advertising worked back in the old days, for example, is that an advertiser would go and find a TV show, for example, that best fit his or her audience. So in this case, I've got Star Trek: The Next Generation up here. That advertiser knew that the Nielsen rating said a particular demographic watched this show on a regular basis, so they're comfortable saying, okay, I know we've got X amount of people watching this that I'm trying to reach. I'm going to put my money down on that show, and my ads are only going to appear on this wholesome piece of family entertainment. Great for the brand, great for the TV station, because they have something very scarce to sell. There's only a limited number of slots available on that show to allow this advertiser to buy from, so there's greater value there. Really worked out great for everybody, but that was the old days. This is how advertising works now, especially on YouTube. So people go to Google with their big sack of money, and they tell Google who they want to reach, and Google goes out and finds them. So whenever you see an ad on this channel or on Phil DeFranco's channel or on anyone else's channel, if I'm not saying those words to you directly of the advertisement, there's been no arrangement with me at all. The brands are not calling me and buying an ad specifically on my channel. In some cases, they might be able to do that, but by and large, the efficient way of advertising now is to do exactly this, where you're going out to Google and having them placing ads directly in front of the people that you are trying to reach. That is how it works. Phil DeFranco doesn't see the ads first. I don't see them first. Nobody sees them. The problem is that people out in the world interpret advertising the way it used to be, that it works like this, and it no longer works like that. And they assume, though, that when the ad shows up in front of them, that brand is endorsing that particular YouTube channel when those ads appear. Yet, what's really happening is that brands are now buying audience, and they're not buying publications. That is the big distinction here between 21st century digital advertising and 20th century traditional advertising. But like I said, out in the world, everyone still thinks that there is a direct one-to-one correlation and endorsement between the advertiser and the content that they're placing their stuff on. So now there's a problem here, because what will happen is, and I've seen this many times in my own experience, that I'll have a small business or a small organization that sees their ad popping up somewhere that they're not comfortable with, because somebody calls them and says, hey, I just saw your ad on blah, 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 blah site, and I think it's horrible that you're advertising there. Meanwhile, they have no control of that, because really what we're after is that individual, and wherever that individual happens to go, that's where that ad's going to pop up. And 9 times out of the 10 times that we get those calls, the person calling was on a website they really shouldn't be comfortable being on. But nevertheless, that is how this whole thing comes about. So what YouTube and Google have done is they've put together some tools to help advertisers find safer places for their content to go. And this is an example of one of the screens that you would see in Google AdWords when you're buying YouTube ads. And they have the ability to strip ads away from certain types of content. So some categories are labeled voluntarily, but many are not. And that's where this whole labeling thing that these YouTubers are falling into come into play. In fact, there is 2 buttons on the ad menu here for tragedy and conflict and sensitive social issues, where you can just click those and your ad will never appear on those topics. And in the past, what happened, by the way, this is nothing new, this has been here forever. In the past, what happened is that these YouTubers just were not earning money on those particular videos unbeknownst to them. Now it looks like YouTube is being more transparent in disclosing the fact that they're not going to earn as much money. But I think what's happening here, because they're completely demonetizing, is that they are just turning off sensitive content altogether and not even offering advertisers the ability to put their ads on it at all. I think that's really what is at the core of all of this. And they're not really being so clear on that, because a friend of a friend, I know this is anecdotal, but I think there's some legitimate value to this story here. A friend of a friend had a really cool YouTube channel where he was blowing things up with firearms and explosives, all legally, but he was doing some pretty crazy stuff. And he reached out to me through my friend to see if we could compare notes on what we were earning per 1,000 views on our content. And I was doing much better than he was reviewing tech gadgets, and we were trying to figure out what the reason for that was. And having known that these options existed within the YouTube platform and in the Google AdWords platform, I suggested to him to start taking away references to firearms and explosives and other things that might be controversial in his titling. And sure enough, his revenue increased as a result of doing that over time, once the algorithms caught up and everything else. So I think this has been going on for a long time. I think that what's happening now, though, is that YouTube is making a very conscientious decision to just knock it out completely. My gut tells me that this is probably related to political advertising season, because here in the United States, one of the biggest sources of revenue for television stations, and by extension YouTube is trying to get into the television advertising market essentially, is political advertising. And political campaigns are very nervous about their ads appearing in places that might generate controversy. And I think that's what's driving a lot of this, because it's no coincidence that right before September starts, usually the second week of September is when political ads really kick into high gear. Now we're seeing this change here. I think that's what's really going on. Now let's take a look at another screen here, because I want to show you what an industry this content filtering has become. So this is another advertising engine that I use for non-YouTube stuff. And this includes banner ads as well as video placements on other platforms. And there is an entire market, entire industry around going through all these different places where ads might appear and providing some categorization for them. So in this example, there's a company called Grapeshot here that goes through and tries to categorize as much as they can to help advertisers exclude their content from specific places. So you'll see here even things that shouldn't be all that controversial, like military sites or manga sites and other things like that, are also part of this mix. In fact, this list goes well beyond what you see on the screen here. And this really goes to show you just how sensitive brands are to where their stuff is being placed. Even though reality is, they know this, that they're buying the audience, and wherever that audience is, they're going to show up. But people out there still think that advertising is done the old way, which is why all of this is happening in the first place. So it's really a big problem, because I think this is going to tamp down the kind of content that we really need as a society on the web, both globally and here in the United States, to encourage journalism. And here we've got yet another example of the funding being taken out from under content that I think is really important for society to progress in. So hopefully we'll see some happy medium on this, but I don't think we're going to see it anytime soon, because money is always driving the equation here in the 21st century and even in the last century. And I don't think we're going to see big changes to this anytime soon. So unfortunately, this is going to be the law of the land here on YouTube for a long time. And the biggest thing that I want YouTube to do, and I've heard other YouTubers allude to this as well, is they just need to communicate with us and let us know what's going on before they do it. If Phil DeFranco, with how many millions of subscribers, gets blindsided by a big change in policy interpretation by YouTube that could directly impact his living, why isn't he being told? Why don't they just put out a notification to say, hey, we're making these changes, prepare yourselves? Instead, they just drop this stuff on people all the time. And we love to hate them for this reason. And maybe they're making money off of us complaining, because this topic alone has generated probably tens of millions of views this week. But I do think it would be nice for YouTube to really start thinking about the implications of what they're doing on people's livings, because many of us are earning a living, or in my case, a portion of my living doing this. And I don't like this uncertainty here. And the good news is, at least we're having some different choices emerging as to where we can place content, but it's still, YouTube is really driving a lot of the growth in the independent content industry, and this kind of stuff really freaks me out. So hopefully they get on the ball with this. But I did want to talk about digital advertising, how it works, and I think maybe we should all start working to educate everyone we know who still thinks advertising is done the old way as to how it works now, so they'll be less sensitive to a fact that a brand might show up on a controversial video knowing that that brand didn't place it there explicitly. So now let's move on to some news, and just a quick one in relation to YouTube, actually, a little competition coming down the line. Twitter announced this week, and you can see this Tube Filter article for more, that they're going to begin sharing revenue with creators beyond those who they've handpicked, which is a great sign. I'm hoping Facebook jumps on board with this too. Because it's about time that more of these folks who take video and ask us to deliver it to them are willing to share some of the revenue they're earning from that. What's one of the reasons why YouTube has become as big as it has is that they have, for a very long period of time, shared revenue they've earned with the people providing content to it. But many other platforms, specifically Facebook, are not. And I'm hoping we'll see more and more platforms do this in the coming months to give us creators a little bit more choice as to where we put our content, so we're not putting all of our eggs in one basket when things like what we just talked about happen. And now it's time for some Q&A, and I've got the same question actually from two different people on Twitter this week about finding a good NAS solution for delivering Blu Ray MKVs to their Nvidia Shield devices. And what I've been finding is that most network attached storage devices should be fine for that, provided they have a DLNA server built in, and most do now. So initially, when I first started doing this Blu Ray thing in my house, I was using just a single drive WD MyCloud. It was hooked up via Ethernet, as was my Nvidia Shield devices. I got 3 of them in different parts of the house, and they all worked great, connected via Ethernet that way, and it was really good, just even on a single drive system. So I think any NAS that you get right now from a major manufacturer like WD, Synology, or QNAP, or Seagate should deliver that content without issue. And every review that I do, I usually check that to make sure that it's capable of playing back that content without incident. So that works. I did want to talk about, though, the bit rates required. So the reason why I hook up everything with Ethernet is that Blu-ray discs tend to need a lot of bandwidth because they are pushing a lot of high-quality video. So at 1080p, a Blu-ray disc needs anywhere from like 20 to 25 to 35 megabits per second. I believe the max is 40 megabits per second on that. Compare that to something you might stream over the internet that's more compressed. So for example, Netflix is usually around 5 megabits per second or so. So you can see really the difference in quality that you'll have with a Blu-ray disc, and therefore you want to make sure that your Shield device or whatever you're playing back to has a very good network connection. Wireless AC will work fine, but as more and more people are using that wireless access point, and perhaps as you get further away from that access point, your ability to push that much data consistently and constantly might decline. So that's why I always suggest going with Ethernet. I also found that if you go with those Mocha adapters we reviewed last week, those tend to work pretty well too. Powerline is a little iffy, but this is the kind of speed that you really need to maintain when you're doing this kind of playback with a NAS. And I got a great question here from a frequent commenter on the channel about that automatic car tracker we looked at last week. And he's wondering, Mr. Brimstond is wondering who can get the info it collects besides who he says. And the answer is that you really don't have control over that. So one of the important things to do when you buy a product like this is to look at their privacy policy, and I want to show you a few items from it. Now, privacy policies really are a statement of trust, and that you have to trust that they will follow the policy that they're putting on their website. There are certainly ramifications if they don't. From a civil perspective, perhaps they get some bad press, but by and large, you have to trust that they're going to follow their own words in how they protect your data. So one of the first lines in their policy here is that you can choose who has access to your data. And by your data, they're meaning specifically the things that would identify you. So they say that they will never sell or share your personally identifiable information like your name, where you drive, or VIN number. But in the case of law enforcement or government, they have to turn it over, of course, but that's usually par for the course these days in the modern world here. But they do say they anonymize data to create interesting insights. And the interesting insights also mean things that they can sell and profit from. So let's take a look a little further into this paragraph here. We may also create and sell industry reports. Example, the most common engine problems for different car brands. Those reports are based on aggregated and anonymized data. They will never contain any of your personally identifiable information. Now, about 10 years ago, there was a couple of scandals. One involved AOL and the other one was Netflix, where they were supplying anonymized data out to different analysts to take a look at, and they found out that there were ways to actually get from that anonymous data who these people were based on what they were searching for or what they were watching on Netflix. So there's really no foolproof anonymized data these days. A lot of thought has gone into it. There are things they can do to make the data more anonymous, but if they only have like 7 or 8 versions of your car in their database, the chances are that it might be easier to line things up. Unlikely, but certainly there, and they will be taking your data and aggregating it and selling it to make additional money. They also talk about this, and this is the biggest area that you should be concerned about. They say, as we develop our business, we might sell or buy businesses or assets. In the event of a corporate sale, merger, reorganization, blah, 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 personal data might be part of the transferred assets. Now, in this event, they'll say they'll notify you via email and via a prominent notice on their website about that change of ownership, but you may not have the choice as to how the acquiring company uses your data moving forward. So while right now they follow a certain policy, if they get acquired in the future, that may not be the case. And again, you really got to think about this stuff, especially when you've got a startup like Automatic that I'm sure would not run away from Google or somebody else paying them a bunch of money for their business. So bear that in mind, because that could happen down the road. So definitely be careful when you buy one of these things. And our next question comes in from Noah Thorne, who had a question about Apple's upcoming event on the 7th, where they'll be presumably announcing the new iPhone 7. And one of the things that I struggle with covering things that are really popular, like the iPhones and the Samsung phones, is that so many other YouTube channels cover them as well that I often don't do very well in search position as a result. And a lot of my traffic, about 85% of it, depends on people finding these reviews via a search. Let me show you what I mean by that. So in the case of the Honor 8 phone that I did just last night, I'm in position 14 on the first page of the search results for that product. So if I type in Honor 8 review, I'm there on position 14. Not bad being on the first page of search results. I think usually what happens is the first day or two I'm in that lower position, and then I sometimes creep up slightly higher. So if I do a search for the Amazon $50 blue phone, I'm in position 2. Position 2 meaning just under the 2 ads at the top of the page. So that review will get seen by a lot of folks who are searching for it. I looked for my iPhone 6s review. I am like past page 20 because I stopped clicking when I got to the 20th page of search results for that. So I don't do very well with very popular products, which is why I always find things that are mostly from name brands, but perhaps not the most exciting portions of their product line. And those typically, by the way, are the things that people are searching for to buy because they're in financial reach of more people. So I definitely jump at the chance when, for example, Huawei contacted me about the Honor phone. I really was very excited to get that because that's a phone that I can review and hopefully get some traffic from versus an iPhone where I don't get all that much traffic. But I will review it because I am an iPhone user and I will get the phone, so I may as well just review it when it comes in. But really difficult in the long term for that video to have any legs to it. A lot of my videos, by the way, go on for a long period of time. So even though the tech industry turns over very quickly, things like my HP stream reviews and that other HP little detachable that we reviewed last year, those videos are still getting watched a year or two later because these products go through their normal cycle out in retail, and then the clearance market picks it up. So the eBay sales and all the other liquidators who get those computers a little while later, people keep coming back for more reviews of those products as they continue to make their way through their product life cycle. So those are things that I always shoot for, things that can have some longevity. Unfortunately for me, iPhones just never get me there. Now it's time for some Q&A for you, and I want to ask about Twitter video because I am going to start uploading stuff to there once they approve my request for monetization. But I wanted to know if you ever watch any video on Twitter, and if you do, are you watching anything longer than a second or two? Because Twitter is one of those things you just kind of scroll through over the course of the day. I know a lot of you are following me on Twitter. You can go to LONSEIDMAN to find me there, but I wasn't sure if you were watching my YouTube videos based on Twitter, where you're clicking on the link and going to YouTube, and if I put the video on Twitter specifically, is that something you would watch there versus YouTube? I'm probably going to upload there anyhow if they're offering monetization and the path of uploading is not all that difficult, but I definitely wanted to get your perspective on Twitter video and how you are using it. And now I want to announce the winner of our Nvidia Shield TV giveaway, and that is Jonathan Domenech. I will reach out to you via email to get you the information that I need to get from Nvidia as to how we get this to you, but I really want to congratulate you and thank everyone who participated. We will have more giveaways coming soon. This was the first one that was offered to people outside the United States. I hope to do more of these in the future, but in the meantime, I will let you know when the next giveaway will happen, likely next week. I think I'm going to do the Voyo all-in-one that I reviewed a couple of weeks ago, so stay tuned. We will have more coming up, and congratulations to Jonathan, and thank you everyone for participating in the giveaway. So this week, we've got a bunch of stuff coming up, including a lot of things that I talked about last week that I had promised to do, which I didn't get to. Part of what happens is that I get some notification from a company about something new and interesting that often knocks other things out of contention. So that Plex DVR, I had really no idea that it was coming up when it did, but I knew it was something that a lot of people would be interested in, so I bumped some other things out of the way and covered that one first. But I did shoot this one, and hopefully this will go up tomorrow. This is called the Vimble. It is a 3-axis stabilizing system for the iPhones. We'll check that out and see how that works. We're also going to take a look at my Intel PC build. We're going to be building an i3-based machine in this wacky-looking test bench thing. We'll probably cover the test bench separately from the computer itself, but it's very convenient as a way of me as a product tester to easily take components in and out of it. So we'll put that together this week and see what we come up with there. And we've got this gaming PC from Lenovo. It's in a box right over there. It just came in, so I'm going to be taking it out and getting it ready for some games. Let me know some of the games you might like me to see play on this one. I don't own every game that everyone would like to see tested, but I have a bunch, and let me know down in the comments below. It's a pretty big 17-inch laptop with a 980 GTX mobile graphics processor built in. Now, if you want to help the channel, you can. You can go to Lon.TV/Patreon and make a monthly contribution to the channel. You can also go to Lon.TV to make a one-time contribution. We're going to be using these funds to help support some part-time help. I am very soon hiring. I finally got my insurance out of the way. You would not believe how much it costs to get all this insurance done properly, but that's done. I'm going to probably get the LLC filed this week, and we'll be ready to go, hopefully with some part-time help to help me get more done around here, because as you saw, I don't know if you can see this, my room's a mess right now. I've got all these boxes just piling up in this new space just because I have no time to clean up after myself when I get done with the review. So hopefully that will help, and those funds will go towards paying that person here. I've been talking about it for a while. It's finally getting to a point where I can do it. Really hard to get a business started sometimes. You can engage with the channel at my email address here at Lon.TV/email. I send out an email newsletter once a week or so. You got the Facebook page at Lon.TV/Facebook, where I update all sorts of stuff throughout the course of the week. Lon.TV/Reddit for the Reddit page. And we have the store where I sell the items that I purchased and now am getting ready to get rid of, which you can find on there. So lots of great ways to connect with the channel. I want to thank everyone for your continued viewership and comments and everything else that you provide to the channel. Thank you all. We're still growing. I think we're over 103,000 subscribers now, on our way to 200,000. I'm still waiting for my little notification to type in my information to get my trophy, my silver play button. Haven't seen that yet. I may reach out to YouTube soon and see where that trophy is, because I got a great spot for it and I can't wait to show all of you. So we're moving forward. Thank you all for your continued viewership, and please keep those questions and comments coming. This is Lon.TV. Thanks for watching. This channel is brought to you by my Patreon supporters. If you want to help the channel, you can by contributing as little as $1 a month. Head over to Lon.TV/Patreon to learn more. And don't forget to subscribe. Visit Lon.TV/S.